If you need to update your deck, go to 50cards.shop. Get 5% off your next purchase when you use code Nexus.
How's it going, YouTube? Today we're going to be going over my updated Youthberk deck profile. So we got Youthberk, Skyfall Arms, Rebuild, and we did get a new RevolForm. We got RevolForm Exist. So this thing is actually really sick here. So this is the new RevolForm. It's pretty cool. It restands a rear guard. It gives your front row 10 or 20k. So you honestly can't really go wrong with this thing. So today we're going to be going over my deck profile for this deck. So you'll see my list and we'll go over some minor combos on how the deck performs and then just overall my thoughts on the deck. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into the deck profile. All right, jumping right into the Youthberk deck profile, we got the new Youthberk ride line. So these are all brand new cards from set 8. So the new Youth grade 0 is literally the same thing, but just with better artwork. The new Youth grade 1 is when it's rode upon by the new grade 2. You Soul Blast 1, look at top 5. You either put any Youthberk into your hand, which is really cool because you can add Rebuild as well, or you call a grade 2 or less unit to the rearguard circle. So it's better because it's top 5 instead of top 3. And you can add a Youthberk, any Youthberk you want, which is really nice. The grade 2, which is also just a strict upgrade. It's when it's rode upon by a unit with the Revel Dress ability. You Energy Blast 3, choose a grade 2 or greater card from your drop and put it in your hand. So instead of a counter blast, you just do energy, which is nice because energy is free and your opponent cannot deny you energy. Then we have our new grade 3, which is Youthberk Skyfall Arms Rebuild. So it has the Revel Dress ability, just like all the other Youthberk grade 3 base Sky arm guys. It also has the ability where you can actually pay a counterblast to Revel Dress from your drop zone, which is really cool. So you don't even need the card in your hand. Then it also has the ability, this thing's got a lot of skills. It also has the ability where when your unit is placed onto your Vanguard circle during your battle phase, you can discard a card from your hand to give that unit drive 1. So yeah, it increases or decreases the drive to 1. So it's just Sequana built into the card, except you have to discard, but it's still really nice. So that's cool. You counterblast, you can Revel Dress from drop, and then you can discard a card to allow your Vanguard to drive check. And then last but not least, the continuous at the end is obviously just at the end of the battle. You know, you re-ride this card as rest, but the card that you RevolFormed with goes to your bind zone face up. So that is the only difference. So your RevolForm cards do not go to the soul, they go to the bind zone, which is, you know, kind of built around Exist's own ability. So that's the ride deck. Oh, last but not least, can't forget energy generator so that, you know, you can acquire energy. I'm also running Persona Shield tickets. I just have 3 in the deck. It doesn't really matter how many you have, but I just feel like I've only been in one scenario where I could have had 3 in my hand at a time, so I have 3 just in case, but Persona Shield tickets just to have, just in case. I'm able to get multiple off at the same time. So going into the main deck for grade 3s, starting out, we got 3 more copies of Rebuild for Persona Ride. Then for our RevolForm unit, we have 4 copies of RevolForm Exist. So this is just a pure Exist build. So Exist, what it does is when it's placed on Van, it gets all the following, which is Energy Blast 3, you choose a rearguard and stand it, so multi-attacking. All your front row get 10k, but if you have a face-up card with RevolForm in its name and it's in your bind zone, this gets 20k instead of 10k, or your front row gets 20k. Then if you have a bind zone with the same name, if a card in your bind zone is the same name as this unit gains a crit as well. So it's pretty aggressive because if you do this the second turn along with Persona Ride, your front row is getting 30k, you restood a rear guard. This is swinging with a crit and a single drive. And then obviously the final skills at the end of the battle, you know, you put it away and you re-ride the original Youthberk. But this is just a really aggressive build for the deck. Just tons of power, multi-attacking, and just, you know, kind of being able to swarm your opponent with a lot of attacks and board building is kind of the goal of the deck. That is it for the grade 3s. We're going to go ahead and jump into the grade 2s. So I didn't say that this deck was going to be creative whatsoever. It's just functional. So obviously we're doing Teeth Vault. This deck is one of those decks that, like, you just can't deny that Teeth Vault is just so good in this deck. If you don't know what this card does, it's when it's placed on rear other than from a card's ability, and if you played in normal order this turn, you Soul Blast 1, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose either a normal unit, same grade or less than your Vanguard, and you can put it in your hand. Or if it's a unit card, you can same grade or less than your Vanguard, you call it to rear. It's just like really good because there's a lot of really good grade 1s, and there are grade 1s in this deck that proc off when they're called specifically from the deck. So Teeth Fault helps with that. Also, when this attacks, if you have 4 or more other units, this gets 10k. So it's a 20k beater by itself. Combine that with the plus 20 to 30k you'll be getting. This is 50k by itself. It's just too good for this deck not to run, and it kind of sucks because this card is just too splashable in any Keter deck. So we're going into more generics. There is not a single like dedicated Youthberk card in this grade 2 lineup. We got 2 copies of this new card from set 7, which is Louveron. When it's placed on rear from hand, other than card's ability, or when you discard it while riding from the ride deck, if your Vanguard has Persona Ride, or you could reveal a card in your ride deck with Persona Ride, you Soul Blast 1, you acquire a Persona Shield ticket, which were those cards that I showed you earlier, which are basically blitz orders that when you play them, your unit gets 10k shield, and you can still play a second blitz order for the turn, which is nice. So just more shield. When this attacks, attacks a grade 3 or greater unit, it gets 5k, so it's a nice little 15k beater. But the fact that you can play it, acquire shield just for defensive measures is nice, and it still works when you discard it. And because there are cards like the grade 2 Youth in the ride deck, which allow you to put cards back into your hand, you could discard this, activate its ability, Energy Blast 3, put it back into your hand, play it, and then get another ticket. So you can get 2 tickets in the same turn with just 1 card, which is pretty cool. So I do like having it for that. Then we're running 2 copies of Exalted Dragon, which is really good for this deck. Whenever this card is discarded from the hand during your turn, if your Vanguard's grade 2 or greater, you can Soul Blast 1 and call this to rear. If you're calling it during the battle phase, it cannot attack, but it has a continuous ability that if your other unit is placed by your card's ability, this unit gets boost. So that either applies to Teeth Fault, which calls cards by abilities, or just Revel Dress, because you're placing your new Vanguard by an ability, so it's placing a unit by an ability. So Exalted Dragon is really good because after you Revel Dress, you have to discard a card to get the drive checks. So you discard Exalted, but then you Soul Blast 1, bring it back as a booster. So it's just a really good card to have to keep up those aggressive plays. It's also just really good later in the game when you want to move it up, and now it's a grade 2 beater. But a 10k booster is just also really cool. Last but not least, I'm running 1 copy of Biscotti. I've been debating on what I've been wanting to do with this last grade 2 slot for a while, and I've seen a bunch of other lists doing things like Maple, or increasing one of these 2, or running something completely different, even like Blaster Blade, which is kind of nutty, but I respect it though. I settled on Biscotti because there's nothing else in the deck that uses energy except for Exist and your grade 2 Youth. So if you're in a scenario where you're going second and you have 9 energy, and you spend 6 on that one turn, you acquire 6, you spend 3, you acquire 6, you spend 3, you still have this 3 extra energy that you're never using if you're going second. And so I'm like, oh, I could use Biscotti for that. And additionally, there are no other cards in this deck that use Counterblast besides your Wisdom of Beginnings, which we'll get to, and your Youthberk. So I feel like, you know what? 1 card, 1 Biscotti, and the one time it'll use a Counterblast, if it means that I get to, win a game or build a board or something, why not? I could see it being helpful. So Spicy Tech, Biscotti, when it's placed on guard from hand or discarded from your hand, you can Counterblast 1 or Energy Blast 3 to draw a card. Then if it's placed on rear when you Persona Ride, you Counterblast 1 or Energy Blast 3. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and then you choose a card from among them, put it on the top of your deck, the rest go to bottom. If it's basically during the main phase or during your ride phase, you can call the card to rearguard circle instead. So this still helps you build a board if you need to, which can come in clutch sometimes. So the 1 Biscotti I feel like has some good use. Tech-wise, obviously Maple is a good choice too. That was my second, choice for this, but if Piscotti ends up not working out, you can always switch it out. That's it for grade 2s though. We're going to go into grade 1s. Again, this is not a creative deck whatsoever, and also this is Keter Sanctuary, so we are of course running 4 Saragon. Saragon is that card that you all know and love. It's when it boosts, if you either play it in order or have more rearguards than your opponent, at the end of the battle, it gets 5k, and then at the end of the battle, it retires. You look at the top 2, put a card to your hand, the other goes bottom. So just a really, really good booster. Obviously this is good because it helps you find RevolForms, but adding any card to your hand is just always good. So 4 Saragon. Then we're running 4 copies of Carino. Yep, that's its name. Carino is when it's placed from 2 rearguard circle from deck, or when it's discarded. You look through your deck for a RevolForm card, and then you put it to your hand, and then you choose a card from your hand and put it to your soul. So what I like to do is, because we do a lot of soul blasting and you're able to revel just from your drop zone, I use Carino to look for exist, and then I put exist into the soul, and then I soul blast the exist for cost, and then revel dress from the drop zone for a counterblast. So basically it's like you're pulling your RevolForms out of your deck for free. If you, for whatever reason, do have a card in your hand, you're like, I don't really need this, and you shove it to your soul, that works too. But that's kind of what I've been doing for this build. Just to kind of maximize seeing your exists, and as soon as they hit the drop zone, you know it's set up for later. But yeah, this is the obvious go-to. Like, these are your staples for grade 1s. I have 1 copy of Topaz. This card is actually so good that I'm really sad that I'm not running it at 2. I might even drop a Scotty to run a second Topaz. That's just how good this card is. It's when it's placed on rear or guardian circle, you put 2 cards from your Joel's soul or drop zone that were originally in the ride deck. You put them back into your ride deck face up. If it's placed on rear, you look at the top 5, call a card that is grade less than or equal to your Vanguard to the rearguard circle. This is pretty much always going to happen during the main phase, so you don't have to worry about the like rested effect. Just being able to fill your board with 1 card is really nice, and you soul blast so much that you're definitely going to be able to meet the requirement for this card at least once. I'm kind of tempted to run 2, but once for sure. This card you definitely need at least 1 of. Then lastly, 3 perfect guards, because, you know, it's Vanguard. You need your perfect guards. And then, you know, the 4th one is, you already know what the 4th card's going to be. But that's it for grade 1s. So next up, we're on triggers. We got the obvious Blade Feather Dragon crit, because it is a crit with a skill. You never know, you might shove it to soul and use it as soul blast fodder. Then we got 4 copies of the crit that came in the Youthberk trial deck. Then we got 3 copies of Alpac, because we're being aggressive and we're giving power to the front row. I am considering draw triggers. That is because the front row is already so huge, just with the Persona Ride and the plus 20k from Exist, that draw triggers might actually be helpful with being able to build a hand. I'm just afraid of decking out because I'm a wuss, so I'm running fronts instead. Then we have our 4 heal triggers, because, you know, just the ones that came in the Youthberk trial deck. And then, of course, Edis Faro, because we are already restanding rear guards, and we want to pressure with the extra crit from the Vanguard, so we can at least give an extra crit to a rear guard. There are other good options that I've seen. I've seen people run the yellow OT. They might be calling it the one that retires your opponent's board, just to kind of catch people off guard, which is kind of funny, and also helps you draw a bunch of cards. But I'm being aggressive, so I'm going full 9 crit in the deck and just drive check a crit while I'm on exist, and if they say no guard, you know, that's game. And also just being able to apply it to a rear guard is nice. But that's just me. I'm going with a basic trigger lineup. Like, this is nothing special. So lastly, for orders, I decided to go with Shroud in Darkness, because it is another order card that procs Teeth Fault. So it costs a counterblast to play, but if you did not ride from the ride deck this turn, you could play without playing the cost. So if you're Persona Road for the turn, you can just play this for free. What it does is you choose up to 2 non-sentinel units with different card names from your drop zone, as long as the grades total equal to your Vanguard's grade. If you called 1 or less cards, you can put this card into your soul. So what I like to do with this card is essentially, you know, you can choose Teeth Fault from your drop zone, and then this is the only target you're going to pick. You just pick Teeth Fault, you call it. This is the other card that goes to your soul. Teeth Fault was placed not by a unit ability, it was placed by an order. So you can soul blast the Shroud of Darkness that you put the soul to be able to use Teeth Fault's effect. But if you're not worried about that and you have enough soul, you can obviously just, you know, pull out your boy, Saragon. So you could just make a column with Shroud in Darkness. So that's why I like the card. I have seen people using Bracing Angel Ladder just so that their board doesn't get blown up by Babs Argra. Totally respect that too. I just like Shroud in Darkness because I think it's funny to be able to rebuild a board really easily. Then for the rest of the order lineup, again, this is not a unique deck. We're doing 4 copies of Wisdom Beginning, so we're doing full-on Keter package. It's 4 Wisdom, 4 Teeth Fault, 4 Sergon. Wisdom of Beginning, what it does is you play it, Counterblast 1, draw 2 cards, then choose 2 cards from your hand, call them to Rearguard Circle. When you play Teeth Fault, with this effect, it procs off Teeth Fault's ability, allowing you to, search your deck and play some cards. This obviously also procs Sergon, so it doesn't matter if your opponent has more rearguards than you, it works because you played in order that turn. So we're just going with the Keter package. And last but not least, our 50th card is Inventaria Sanctitude, because it's our 4th Sentinel, and every standard deck runs one. So that is pretty much it for the deck. The combo is basically your standard Wisdom of Beginning to be able to proc off the Sergon and the Teeth Faults that are in your hand. So after you get your ideal setup with this in your hand, you're able to follow that suit with having other really good potential discard cards in your hand, such as Exalted Dragon and Carino. Carinos are also really good to pull out from your deck. But basically, the way that your board is going to want to try and look like is you're going to be on your Vanguard. You're going to have some type of front row, whether it's Teeth Fault or something else up here. It doesn't really matter what it is. Let's just say for now, it's this guy. So another good reason why you might want to run Maples, so that every time you Persona Ride, you just get another beater in the front row. So your Teeth Fault is hopefully going to help you find another unit. Let's just assume it's Sergon back here. It can really go anywhere. And then you do your swing with your bigger number that you want to restand, which is always your Teeth Fault. You swing with your Vanguard, you do your drive checks, and then you proc your Sergon, get some more cards in your hand. Then you want to activate your Revel Dress. So either you're going to do it from your drop zone or you're going to do it from your hand. So assuming you do it from, your hand, you Revel Dress, and then you Energy Blast 3, you restand a Rearguard. Then you can use Rebuild's effect to discard a card from your hand. Your Van now has a single drive, and then you can use Exalted's ability to call it as a booster, call it anywhere. It doesn't really matter where, but now you have a free 10k booster. Exist's ability gives power to your front row. It has a crit. You swing again, you do another drive check with big number. They have to guard it because it's huge. And then you have 2 more swings with huge numbers. And just tons of deck thinning that you've done with trying to filter out your deck with Teeth Fault. And then if Teeth Fault looks at the top 5 cards and you find Carino, you use this to grab an Exist, put it into your soul, and then with the Soul Blast of another effect, you can Soul Blast it out and then be able to, have this set up in your drop zone for your Revel Dress. So that's another reason why I like running Soul Blasting cards, so that you can Soul Blast your Exists out of your soul and then get it set up for Revel Dress. Soul Blasting is really good in this deck, and Soul Charging is just so frequently consistent. This deck has a lot of really fun, unique, aggressive plays. It's kind of sad to say, but I feel like despite the fact that the hate that this build gets from the community in terms of it being just so brain dead, it works so well in Youthberk. It's kind of sad. This card, these 2 cards were just meant for each other. But yeah, that's pretty much the deck. And other than that, that's just your main go-to combo. Just make board, swing big number, swing Van, get another big number, keep swinging, and get crits. So thank you guys for watching. Be sure to let me know what you thought of my deck in the comments. I'm always looking to find ways to improve it and kind of showcase more content or deck profile content to you guys. With that, if you are interested in updating your decks and being able to pick up new cards, I highly recommend going to 50 Cards. Be sure to check them out for singles, playset bundles, which is the best way to update decks in my opinion. They also have sleeves, deck boxes, mats, everything you need for Vanguard. And be sure to use code Nexus to get 5% off at checkout as well. So with that said, my name is Richard, and thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.